Let me welcome you all to this round of panel discussion. We have extremely talented panelists here. But let me give you a little bit of a background as to what this Entrepreneurship Summit needs to be about. I know all of you are so much in tune with the world today, and all of you are engineering to-be graduates. Can I know in which year all of you are in? First year? Second year? Third year and fourth year also? Good. What I'm seeing here in the audience is about 60% are men and about 40% are women. Yes? That's what I can judge from the way all of you have sat. And what happens once all of you graduate? I mean, I know the first years go into second year goes into third year, and then the final year students graduate. The first choice would be to sit for campus placement. I'm sure a campus like yours attracts the best companies, and most of you are looking for that cushy job to get into post your graduation. A few of you might want to get into master's, so you look at those opportunities. But I think a very, very, very small percentage actually thinks about the entrepreneurial angle. And that's the reason why, though we are a population of 1.3 billion today, and the statistics that were actually shared out to you, we have lakhs and lakhs of engineering graduates coming out every single year. Very, very few ideas actually come out into the marketplace, and very, very few ideas are actually commercialized. In fact, today, as Mr. Jayesh Ranjan had mentioned earlier, the world does not look at India as an idea creator or as a trendsetter. Yes, though we have the population today, but these percentages of youngsters that are graduating out of our colleges yearly are only looked at as trying to fill in the void that those developed nations don't have, and that is to create a workforce. So we actually are working our butts off to create more wealth for other nations and to create more prosperity for other nations. But are we creating that prosperity for ourselves? That is a question that all of you will have to ask yourselves. And to go forward, if you're thinking about the entrepreneurial angle, will that just happen one day out of the blue? Or should you start thinking about it as you graduate towards the end of your academic career? Because this is not a dream that just happens to a few persons. One day you just wake up and then an idea hits you and then you go out into the market to develop or to produce it. This is a long struggle, and that is what one needs to understand. What are the skill sets that one requires to become an entrepreneur? You need a lot of grit, a lot of passion, a lot of sustaining power, patience, and the never say die attitude. You will see a number of speakers in these 2 days of your summit who will share lots of wisdom with all of you. But how many of you will actually take it to heart? When I made the statement that I only see 40% of women, today the sad fact is, though we have all the colleges in India, almost 50% with women, when it comes to the workplace, this ratio drastically falls. The ratio might be maintained in the initial stages of your career, but post 7 to 9 years, the drop happens. And what is going to happen? That really affects the nation's economy. Most of you should understand that if you do not continue in your career, especially the girls sitting here, we will always remain a minority. I know that there is a speaker from the Startup India initiative. How many of you have heard about the Startup India? So one thing about the Startup India, if somebody can tell me, whom does it include or whom does it not include? The Startup India is mainly for the boys here, or for the men. Do you girls know about it? If you are a women entrepreneur and if you want to come out there and start your product, sadly you do not come under the Startup India, but there is something called a Stand Up India initiative that is come out by the Central Ministry. And this, they have actually clubbed us with the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe. So that means that even in the eyes of the government, women are still considered a minority, women are still considered that they need a little bit of extra push and a nudge into the entrepreneurial field. And that's the reason why the policy makers or the policy formulators have actually put us aside into a small cocoon. But when you all come to college and you're given an equal opportunity, why is it that once you graduate and you want to start out your entrepreneurial dream, are you then set aside? And what happens to these very few percentages of women who actually come out and start their own startups and then actually scale up into a full-fledged corporate? Do they actually continue in their career? Do they actually continue in their entrepreneurial dream? Remains to be seen. Today, if you look at in the Indian context, you have less than 16% of women in the workspace, whether as professionals or as entrepreneurs. And that is actually telling us a fact that the world is still not achieved gender parity, especially in India. And if you are looking at creating an equal or an equality in this world, unless you choose to sustain yourself, unless you choose to continue in your career, whether it's professional or the entrepreneurial kind, you will not be able to create an impact in society. And on that note, I'd like to welcome all my panelists, and I will ask each of them a couple of questions so that we understand what it is. Especially I understand from the two speakers on my immediate left, they've come from the nations of Finland and Sweden. Most of you do know that the Scandinavian countries are immensely popular for gender equality. And on the gender parity index, I'm sure the Scandinavian nations of both Finland and Sweden are actually ranking maybe 1 or 2. Would all of you know where India stands on that gender parity index? Can I get a guess from the audience? It's 108, not 130. 130 is really, really bad. But out of the 180 nations or so that is recognized by the UN, we stand at a very, very measly 108. And that means there is a huge scope of improvement for us as a nation. And that, again, we cannot leave it to our policy makers, but we, the generation that is actually going to be graduating today, the responsibility lies with you. Because you have to come out there and make a name for yourself. You have to make a noise if inequality is being meted out to you, and you will have to pave the way for the next generation. So on that note, I will invite our speakers. We have with us the Tibetan Finance Minister, Mr. Karma Yeshi, who in his speech this morning told us that though he's not an entrepreneur, though he's not studied any of the core subjects of being an entrepreneur, yet he is leading a nation as its finance minister. And that means there is a huge responsibility in trying to create policies. And I'm sure that he, as a refugee of a nation that is always known for its peacekeeping methods, for its peace-loving methods towards the world. And sir, I would like to mention that I was in Manasarovar almost 13 years back. And I did this arduous trek and to Kailash and Manasarovar almost 13, 14 years back. And that was actually a crucial step in my own evolution as an entrepreneur. I actually got the confidence and the strength to make it out on my own. Until then, if you had actually looked at my career graph, I always came from a traditional community that really didn't see the rise of women in their community. Our role was only to study until we got married and then to look at the domestic side of the family. And we actually did not have much inputs to give into the business or into our corporates that were family owned. But I think this trip of mine actually made me realize that we as a person, if we are on this earth, then we are given a dream to actually fulfill. And if we can create this better world for the next generation, and I think that itself will allow us to be here for some more time.